royals have posed for a new formal photograph. There, she's the only splash of color in this picture, but take a close look at her tiara.
The afternoon sunlight stretched across the long palace windows and spilled over the polished floors of Kensington Palace, turning everything gold for just a few moments before evening approached. Inside one of the private drawing rooms, Catherine stood quietly beside a table covered with handwritten notes, invitations, and flowers recently arranged in crystal. The room looked peaceful, elegant, untouched by stress, but Catherine herself felt anything but calm. The past week had been filled with endless responsibilities, appearances, meetings, and preparations for the state banquet. Every royal engagement demanded perfection, and she had learned over the years how to carry that pressure with grace. Yet on this particular afternoon, a strange heaviness settled over the palace. It was the kind of silence that feels too still, as though something is about to happen. Catherine paused, adjusted a single white rose in the vase before her, and took a slow breath. She wanted only a few quiet minutes before the evening preparations began. But royal life rarely allows silence to last for long. A message arrived requesting that she receive Queen Camilla privately. The request itself sounded simple, respectful, ordinary even. Yet something about it immediately unsettled Catherine. She placed the note down carefully and stared at it for several seconds before asking that Camilla be shown in. Minutes later, Camilla entered with calm confidence, wearing a composed smile and carrying herself with the polished ease of someone entirely comfortable with power. She greeted Catherine warmly, exchanged the usual courtesies, then sat across from her in one of the antique chairs by the window. For a few moments they spoke of routine matters, the upcoming banquet, foreign guests arriving, the pressure of state events. Then Camilla's tone shifted. It became more deliberate, more focused. Catherine sensed instantly that this visit had a purpose. Camilla explained that she had been reviewing wardrobe plans for the state dinner and wanted everything to project strength, continuity, elegance, and royal unity before the international guests. She spoke about symbolism, presentation, and the message clothing and jewels can send without words. Then, almost casually, she made the request. She asked to borrow Catherine's tiara for the event. The words landed heavily between them. Catherine remained perfectly still, her expression calm, but inside she felt the shock immediately. It wasn't simply a request to borrow jewelry. The tiara held personal meaning for her far beyond appearance. It was tied to memory, to milestones in her royal life, to moments she carried privately in her heart. To anyone else it may have looked like another beautiful royal heirloom. To Catherine, it was deeply personal. For a brief second she thought she may have misunderstood. But Camilla continued speaking, explaining why it would be perfect for the banquet, how beautifully it would complement her gown, how the photographers would admire it, how guests would read it as a message of royal unity. Every sentence sounded thoughtful and polished. Yet to Catherine, each word felt heavier than the last. It no longer felt like a casual request. It felt like pressure hidden inside diplomacy. Refusing a queen would never be simple. Refusing something framed as being for the crown would be even harder. Catherine chose her words carefully and gently suggested other options, other pieces that might be equally suitable. Camilla listened politely but remained firm. She had clearly already decided. Catherine felt trapped between personal emotion and public duty. She knew how the royal system worked. She knew that saying no in private can echo loudly in ways no one sees. She also knew how easily hesitation can be interpreted as resistance. Her loyalty to the family had always been part of who she was. She had spent years protecting peace where possible, smoothing tensions before they became visible, choosing grace over conflict. But now she sat facing a request that touched something deeply personal. Her mind raced through every possible answer. None felt safe. In the end, after a silence that seemed to last forever, Catherine quietly agreed. Camilla smiled with visible satisfaction and thanked her warmly, calling it thoughtful and generous. Then she rose, exchanged a few final words, and left the room. When the door closed behind her, the silence returned, but everything felt different. Catherine remained seated for a long moment, unable to move. The room looked exactly the same, yet it no longer felt peaceful. Her eyes drifted toward the velvet case where the tiara rested. She knew it would soon be collected, prepared, documented, and transferred through official channels. But what? Weighed on her most wasn't the object itself. It was what had just happened. She replayed the conversation in her mind again and again, wondering whether she could have answered differently, whether she should have pushed back more firmly, whether she had truly agreed or simply surrendered because saying no felt impossible. She pressed her hands together in her lap and exhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. By evening, word had already begun moving quietly through palace corridors. Staff noticed everything. They noticed jewel transport procedures being prepared. They noticed unusual instructions from royal dressers. They noticed changes to security movement and documentation. Inside a palace, whispers travel faster than footsteps. Soon servants, aides, dressers, assistants, and private secretaries all carried fragments of the story. Some believed Catherine had offered the tiara willingly. Others believed the request had placed her in an impossible position. No one knew the full truth, but everyone sensed tension. Meanwhile, Prince William was away from London carrying out official engagements. He had no idea what had happened behind palace doors. He knew the state dinner was approaching and expected it to be another formal royal occasion carried out with the usual precision. He didn't know Catherine had spent the afternoon carrying the emotional weight of a conversation she could not share openly with anyone. She moved through the rest of the day with composure, speaking to staff, reviewing plans, handling correspondence. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything felt unsettled. The night of the banquet arrived in full royal splendor. The palace glittered beneath chandeliers, candles, polished silver, crystal glass, and formal dress uniforms. Cars arrived beneath bright lights. International guests stepped onto red carpets. Cameras flashed endlessly. Broadcasters spoke with admiration about the grandeur of the evening. Across the country and beyond, viewers watched live coverage of the royal family welcoming dignitaries in magnificent style. Then Camilla entered the room wearing the tiara. The stones blazed beneath the chandelier light. Photographers immediately focused their lenses. Commentators praised the jewel's beauty and elegance. It became one of the most talked-about images of the evening. Catherine did not attend. Officially, her absence was explained through scheduling. Privately, the truth was more emotional. She remained in her private sitting room and watched the event unfold from a distance on television. Every time the camera cut toward Camilla, the tiara filled the screen. Catherine sat motionless watching the jewel catch the light from every angle while commentators admired its brilliance. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply watched in silence. Yet the weight of the moment stayed with her. It felt strange seeing something so personal transformed into part of a public display. By the following morning, photographs were everywhere. Newspapers carried full-page images from the banquet. Royal coverage praised the styling, the elegance, the success of the evening. And among the most circulated images was Camilla wearing Catherine's tiara beneath the palace lights. The image spread quickly. William saw it before he returned home. When William arrived back at Kensington Palace later that day, tired from travel, he expected a normal reunion with Catherine after several days apart. Instead, the moment he saw her, he sensed something was wrong. Her smile was warm but subdued. Her eyes looked tired in a way he recognized instantly. William had known Catherine long enough to notice what others would miss. He asked casually about the banquet. Catherine answered carefully. Too carefully. That was when he knew there was more to the story. He sat with her privately, and slowly Catherine told him everything from beginning to end. The meeting, the request, the pressure, the agreement, the banquet, and watching the tiara on television from home. William listened without interrupting. His expression darkened with every detail. At first he looked confused, then stunned, then deeply angry. Not impulsive anger, but the kind that builds in silence. He stood and walked toward the window, hands clenched, staring out over the palace gardens while absorbing what he had heard. For William, this was never just about a tiara. He saw what the moment had cost Catherine emotionally. He understood what it meant to her. More than that, he saw the pressure she had felt and how little room she believed she had to refuse. That troubled him deeply. He turned back toward her and asked where the tiara was now. Catherine quietly admitted. It had not yet been returned. That answer changed everything. The next morning William began making private calls. Senior household aides were contacted discreetly. Questions were asked. Timelines reviewed. Quiet conversations unfolded behind closed doors across the palace. Staff immediately sensed a shift in atmosphere. There was tension in every corridor. Meetings appeared on calendars unexpectedly. Doors closed more often. Voices lowered when footsteps approached. No public statement was ever made, but behind the scenes something serious was happening. William wanted clarity. He wanted answers. Most of all, he wanted Catherine to know she would never stand alone in something like this again. A private meeting between William and Camilla was eventually arranged. No aides. No press. No witnesses. Only a closed room and two strong personalities entering it with entirely different views of what had happened. No official record exists of what was said inside, but Palace Whispers later described it as deeply tense. William reportedly spoke with unusual firmness. He made clear that Catherine should never feel pressured over something so personal again. Camilla reportedly defended the request as appropriate for the occasion and consistent with royal expectations. But William saw the issue differently. For him, this had crossed a line. The tiara was quietly returned soon afterward without announcement or ceremony. No photographs marked its return. No statement was released. It simply reappeared in Catherine's possession as discreetly as it had left. When Catherine opened the velvet case and saw it again resting inside, it looked unchanged. The stones still shone brilliantly. The craftsmanship remained as beautiful as ever. Yet it felt different now. Because objects can carry memory, and memory can alter how something feels forever. Publicly, royal life continued exactly as before. Engagements resumed. Appearances were made. Smiles were exchanged before cameras. The institution presented unity, grace, and calm. But privately, those inside the palace knew something had shifted. The incident became one of those royal moments never acknowledged publicly yet never forgotten behind closed doors. For William, it strengthened his determination to protect Catherine in ways both visible and invisible. For Catherine, it became another reminder of how complicated life inside the monarchy can be, where duty and emotion often collide quietly behind smiles. And for royal watchers, the story became yet another whispered chapter in the long and complicated history of power, tradition, loyalty, and personal boundaries inside palace walls. Long after the banquet ended and the lights were switched off, the memory remained. And every time the tiara caught the light again, it seemed to carry not only sparkle and history, but the silent echo of that unforgettable moment inside the palace.